But, oh, there you go. Yeah, so on Saturday, February 6th, we're doing this really exciting workshop. It's just for networking. You can hang out and meet other instructors, meet each other, and we want to get to know you all a lot more. So do try and come to the event. I'll leave the link in the chat. It's an Eventbrite sign up. It's just a really quick sign up thing, so we can send out the Zoom link. But yeah, we're really excited to kind of hang out with you outside of just workshop time. Yeah. Yumi, you can go ahead with
and then the instructors can do a little introduction and start the workshop.
Sorry, Yumi, you cut out. Was that our cue to start?
Yeah, for you guys.
Okay, sorry about that. Perfect. No, thank you so much for that warm introduction. Very excited to welcome you guys back to part 2 of the wealth building process. So welcome for those of you who are first-time viewers, and welcome back for those of you who joined us last week for part 1. If you had missed the part 1 of our workshop series, feel free to just reach out to any of the executives or even myself or Jacob for the recording of it, and we'd be happy to share that with you. But my name's Jonathan. This is Jacob. And we're very excited to be able to speak with you guys. And again, big shout out to SFU Emerge for setting this up. I say this time and time again, but I truly wish I had something like this while I was going through my own SFU journey. But I'm very glad to be able to be on the other side of it, where I'm actually speaking to you guys to hopefully benefit at least one of you with the different workshops that we're presenting to you today. So without further ado, let's get started here. And I'm going to let Jacob just quickly recap this one slide here, just because there's been a number of questions on this one very important slide. Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, there were 2 topics that we got a lot of questions on. So the first one is the grad program. So just to reiterate for those who were not here last time, so the grad program is something that very few people know about. But basically, after graduation, these professions that are listed here have 1 year to lock in a permanent discount that's up to 30% for the rest of your life on disability insurance. So if you guys have questions on this, we can definitely answer them afterwards. Yeah. And the second question we had were a question about our favorite books. So I'll let Jonathan talk about that quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have a more extensive list in the Discord chat, so you guys can check that out, or always just message me. But personally, my two favorite personal finance reads are Rich Dad Poor Dad by Mr. Kiyosaki and Master Your Money. I won't comment on them too much, but I personally very much enjoyed these two. If you guys are looking for more technical reads, then feel free to just reach out. But Jacob, I'll let you explain your 2 books, and then we can get started here.
Yeah, so if you are a Canadian, okay, and B, if you're interested in investing, my number 1 book recommendation is this book called Millionaire Teacher. So a lot of books that exist that you guys have found, the most popular ones especially, were written for a US audience or for the general public, right? Very few books were written specifically for Canadians. So this book specifically does a lot of the theory, just like other books, but it's also very applicable. So you know exactly what type of accounts that you need to open and also the tax consequences. So by the end of this book, you actually are able to start investing if you wanted to. And the second book is probably one of the top 5 books that I always recommend, regardless of any category. And it's my number 1 personal finance book. And it's called The Millionaire Next Door. And basically what it does is it gives you an insider view of what it's like to actually be a millionaire. And so not what a lot of people typically think. So a lot of you guys may think that, a doctor is typically someone who's going to be very wealthy. And statistically, that is not true, right? And so, this book describes how millionaires will save their money, how they invest their money, how they spend their money, like, for example, what type of cars that they purchase and those kind of things, right? So I love this book a lot because it drives home something that we talked about last time, which was becoming wealthy is not an accident. There's a very meticulous process for it, right? Becoming wealthy is not an accident.
Awesome. Okay, so before we get started, we always like to engage the audience. So we have a quick poll for you guys. I'm wondering, Yumi or Mika, I'm wondering if you guys can launch that up. So we just want to get to know you guys a little bit better. And
sorry, 1 second. It says I've been logged out, so I can't activate the polls. Give me 1 second.
I think it's actually up and running right now.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Is this the one from last time, G?
Oh no, this is actually not the right one.
That's okay. We've got some people participating anyway.
There we go.
Give me 1 second, because it says I'm logged out, but I'm not,
might
because
have
I
to
was
make
able
you
to start a meeting.
No worries. And we have another poll later in the conversation as well. And so we can always just write it in the chat box. We don't necessarily have to use a poll. But the original question with regards to this slide here was actually, where do you guys intend on living? Was it in Vancouver or Toronto or somewhere else in the world? And the follow-up question we were wondering is, do you guys have a plan? It's less funny if I say it out loud, but I'll say it out loud. It said, do you have a plan? Yes, no, find a sugar daddy. See, it's less funny if I say it out loud. I feel I have a weird taste in my mouth after saying that, but that was the joke. It was supposed to be funny. But we'll carry on as if that never happened. Moving on. Super excited again, yes, to give you guys this second part of the workshop. So we're going over the 9 steps of the tested wealth building process. And today we're going to be going through steps 5 through 9. And so step 5 here is where we left off last time with a little bit of a cliffhanger. And so we're going to talk about investing. Then we're going to go into house payment guidelines, a few things that you guys should know. Then preparing for your own family, paying off your home versus investing, and then building wealth and being outrageously generous, our favorite thing to talk about. And so I'm going to let Jacob summarize for those of you who weren't able to make it last time, just really quickly what we did talk about last time.
Could you just click back 1 slide real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if it's okay with you guys, what we wanted to do, as we mentioned last time, is we want to make this time as valuable for you guys as possible. And really, we hope that this is a presentation that is one of the most valuable presentations you guys actually ever see in your entire life. So if you guys aren't already yet taking notes, just like last time, I really hope that by the end, that small piece of paper that you guys will have will be insanely valuable. So definitely take notes as we go through this, and we'll highlight some things for you guys to write down also.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So just a quick recap of what we talked about last time. So first step in the process is to get your insurance in place, right? And then step 2 is to get a really small emergency fund. And the reason we keep it small is so that we can do step 3, which is to eliminate your debt as soon as possible, right? Our quote that we shared last time was, modern slaves are not in chains, they are in debt. And then after that, step 4 is to create that full emergency fund. And G talked about a little bit of this last time. We talked about investing and compounding in step 5. The key takeaway of this, the number one thing, is that when we are trying to build this process, you have not earned the right to start investing until you've already done steps 1 through 4, right? So what a lot of people try to do is they try to build like this tower, right, with their financial plan. But if they don't have these first 4 steps in place, then their plan becomes totally irrelevant. It's like trying to build a tower without a really strong foundation. There's a very high chance that tower is going to come crashing down. Okay. So yeah, I'll let you continue on the topic of investing.
Perfect. And so really, this is where we left off. And just to summarize super quick, we have the accumulation example, right? We have person A and person B. Person A invests $3,000 for the first 10 years, then never puts another dollar in. Person B decides to wait for whatever reason. They want to buy a home, go on vacation, buy a new car, whatever, right? And then they decide, I'll start investing when person A stopped. And then they'll continue to invest for the rest of their life. But as we can see here, even though person A put in significantly less money, they actually still have more money than person B, right? And so why is that? And so let me tell you. A long time ago, this is one of my favorite stories. A long time ago, back in the ancient days, there was this very wise ruler, and he loved to play chess, right? And so he challenged all these different people in the lands of who were supposedly also chess masters, and he beat them way too easily, right? And so he decided, you know what? I'm gonna put this huge prize of 1,000,000 grains of rice to whoever can beat me. And there was this one young boy who was very bright and very smart, and he actually had the opportunity to speak with this king, and he said, I challenge you to a game of chess. However, if I win, I would like to choose the prize. And so the king said, oh, of course, sure. What's your prize? What do you want? And so the young boy said this. If you look at the 64 squares on the chessboard, on the first one, I would like 1 grain of rice. On the second square, I would like 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then continue to double it until you fill up the chessboard. So the king saw this and thought, wow, this is there's nothing to lose. This is so few grains of rice, and I mean, as a young boy, I can definitely beat him, right? And so the two of them end up playing chess, and the young boy actually beats him. And so the king thought, oh no, that's too bad. That's okay though. I guess I owe you your rice. Let's start counting. So the king put 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard. And then he put 2, and then 4, and so on and so on. And he wasn't worried by the end of that first row, but he kept counting. By the time he got to that second row, he realized that he put 32,000 grains of rice. And he thought, oh, this is getting interesting. By the end of his third row, he knew he was in trouble because he put in 8.4 million grains of rice. Once he got to that fourth row, he just stopped counting because he realized that the number was just getting way too insane. And so the king said, oh my goodness, how could I ever repay my debt to you? There's no way I can give you all this rice, right? And so the young boy said, you will continue to owe me and my children until all your debt is paid off. So you will pay me grains of rice until you pass away, and then your children will pay my children's grain of rice, and so on and so on. And so that young boy ended up, he grew up to become Jacob Chang today. And so if you guys ever need some rice, just hit him up because he's got like a lot of it. If you need like fried rice or anything. But yeah, so that's the story of the chessboard and the rice. So this is what we're talking about, you guys. It's the power of compound interest, right? In those early years, it's very slow. It went from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, but then we noticed in those later years, it really sped up. And so this is the power of exponential growth with compound interest. But if you want to get to those later years where you're experiencing doubling of 1 billion grains of rice, then you actually need to start at some point. And so this is why we want to start early, because the earlier you start, the less money you actually have to invest, and the less aggressive and risky your investments need to be. This is a great quote as well. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. There's a great picture to take right here. And if we Google it, it says Chinese proverb. I just Googled it. But sometimes you see Mexican proverb or Indian proverb. To be honest, we really aren't sure who said it. It's like it could be Wayne Gretzky for all we know. But so take that with a grain of salt. But this quote itself is a great one. That's the point of it. That's the point. Moving on. Now let's talk about the cost of coffee. Everyone's favorite guilty pleasure, buying coffee. We know we shouldn't do it, but what does it really cost us? Or maybe it's bubble tea for you, whatever the case might be. And so for this workshop, you guys, we wanted it to be very interactive. And so I would like to actually invite everybody, even if your cameras are off, just to think about how many bubble teas or coffees you buy per month and just write it in the chat. And don't lie to us. You're only lying to yourself. We're trying to help you here. So let's see here. How many bubble teas do you buy a month? 0. All these zeros. We have so many responsible people. How boring.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh,
20. That's more realistic, yeah.
5 plus. Okay. 2, 3, 20.
20, I am honest.
Wow, everyone's so responsible. I wanted to make fun of someone. This is a safe space, you guys. Be honest, please. Oh my goodness, you guys are making me feel bad. I don't like bubble tea. That's a lie. That's definitely a lie. What is irresponsible? I mean, I know people that buy like 1 per day minimum. 60. Okay, there we
60,
go.
That's more reasonable. Like that's what I'm more used to. Yeah.
Okay, fine, 100. I love it. Okay, you guys. So we're gonna do something a little bit different. Hopefully, you guys have never been in a lecture or a workshop that has done something like this before. But we're actually gonna write into the chat box a link. So everybody, please stop commenting. Jacob's gonna throw that link in. Do you guys see it? Calculator.net, right? So for what we're gonna do now is I'm actually gonna exit my full screen. Exit my full screen, and I'm going to be showing you guys that link. So if you have 2 screens, then you can feel free to have one of the screens on my Zoom call and then the other screen on the link. If you just have one screen, you can just have them half and half, right? But we would like you guys to follow along with what I'm doing on the screen, but also do it on your screen as well, so that you can practice using this very useful tool. We'll give it a moment for everybody to open that up. Okay, now once you're in the same link, what we're looking at here is something called an investment calculator or a compounding calculator. So it gives us a really accurate prediction of how much our savings will actually grow depending on the type of investment you make, right? So we're looking here. Let's assume we start with $0 because we're poor so far, but soon we'll be rich. And we're gonna invest for 45 years. Let's say we're 20 years old today and we want to retire at 65, then that's 45 years of working. Let's plug in a return rate of 9% just to be consistent. And how much are we contributing? Well, let's say we buy 1 coffee a day. That's pretty average. Then that's about $5 a day. There's 30 days in a month, so it's about 150 per month. And check this out, you guys. I'm going to hit calculate. And this end balance is the amount of money my $5 actually could have been if I had invested it rather than spending it. So I don't like how it looks. I'm actually going to try to hit it at $1 million. So let's go to 151. And you know what? I do this all the time. I just play around with it. 152. I'm so close. Oh my goodness, 153. Let's get that bread. $1 million. Let's go. But don't get too excited because it's just on the screen. It's not in your wallet yet. But anyways, I get really excited when I do this calculator. So the total contributions, check out this guys as well. This is how much the 153 actually became just from putting in 153. It accumulates to become $82,000, but your money grew. It worked for itself and became $900,000, right? That's the difference. So feel free to play around with this on your own as well. We're going to go back to the presentation here. Don't close that site just yet, though, because we're going to be going back to it in just a bit. But we want to introduce you guys to this compounding calculator because it is a very, very useful tool. So this is what we just saw earlier. And we just answered the question of what is the true cost of coffee? One coffee a day is actually $1 million. And so this is why starting early is important, because it's time that allows us to really have our money compound for us. And so maybe those coffees or those bubble teas are super duper important for you. Then we just ask you, where else can you save $5.10 a day? And I love this slide. By no means are we endorsing materialism or get rich quick or anything like that, but what does $1 million really look like, right? Well, first of all, I know that money can't buy happiness, but I'd rather cry in a Lamborghini than elsewhere. So I definitely, that's a mood. It's a mood. Vroom, vroom times 5. And, you know, maybe you can channel your inner Oprah and get stuff for your mom. You know, you get a boat, you get a house. I love it. I love it. And check out these flip-flops. Check out these legs. These are some nice legs. Oh, and the view's super nice too, right? These legs could be yours. Looking at this view, that's what I'm talking about, right? So we can retire early and go somewhere nice. So these are some of the things that $1 million actually looks like, just to give you guys some perspective. Alrighty, I'm gonna let Jacob take it away because I've been talking way too much.
Sweet, thanks, man. So what we're gonna do is you guys can write this down now. So we talked about investing a whole ton, but the step, which is actually step 5, is to invest 20% of your after-tax household income into investments, right? So every time you guys get a paycheck, what we want you guys to do is to take 20% of that and put that towards your investments. And this percentage, right, that goes exclusively for retirement, right? Something interesting about this is that we've been doing this process for a while, and so have our mentors. And so this 20% is a catch-all for everyone, right? But because you guys saw the power of compounding, that number for you guys, especially for those of you in SFU or who had just graduated, that 10 to 15% is probably sufficient because you guys are starting so early, right? So just I'd like to share a quick story. So one of my mentors, he had a client who was 55 years old, and this guy had $2 million in a retirement savings account. What was interesting about this guy is that his income was $700,000 a year. Okay. And so what he thought was like, okay, you know what? I've got $2 million in the bank. That's way more than most people have, right? And so like, I don't need to worry about retirement because I'm totally all set, right? And so my mentor said, well, okay, let's do some math, right? So you've got $2 million in the bank and you've got $700,000, a lifestyle that requires $700,000 per year. So if we do some basic math, it seems that you can retire comfortably for about 3 years, right? So for you guys, when you see your numbers going up, when you start investing, like don't focus on the number in your account, right? Focus on the percentage that you save, right? It's not about how much you put away. It's about the percentage that you guys put away. So that 15%, that 10%, that 20% is the most important thing. It's not about how much you put away. It's about the percentage that you put away. And so we're going to do this again. We're going to take out that retirement calculator, but this is exactly what it's going to look like for you guys, right? Oh, not just yet, G.
Oh, my bad.
Thanks. So what we're going to do is you guys can follow along with this, right, with your own calculator. So what we found is that, you know, as soon as you graduate, most of you guys at SFU, the average salary for an SFU grad, right, in your 20s is about $60,000, right? I'm not sure why there's a poll coming up, but that's okay. Yeah, no worries, thanks. So basically that's you guys' average income statistically for those of you who are graduating after at SFU, right? And so that's 60K pre-tax. So after tax, that's going to be $50,000, right? So this is going to be exactly your guys' situation, right? And what we want to do is we're going to take that $50,000, right? And we want to save what? We're going to save about 20%. But because you guys are a little bit young, we're going to use about 15%, right? So 15% of that $50,000, that's $7,500 per year, okay? Which comes to $625 per month, right? So yeah, I think Jennifer just said, yeah, $50,000 straight out of graduation, that's goals. But yeah, so basically in your 20s, hopefully the average in your 20s is about $60,000, and that's statistically what happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the retirement calculator now, or the investment calculator now. And so $60,000 is the average for SFU. But some of you guys who are in business, especially in computer science, or some of you guys with your MBA or a master's degree, your number will be a little bit higher, right? So what we want to do is take a look at what this would actually look like for you guys in real life. So your starting amount is going to be zero, right? And so after about 42, 43 years, right? So most of you guys will graduate after undergrad around 22 or 23 years old. So you retire around 65. You guys will be around 42 years, right? So return rate, we're going to keep that there at 9%. And then this is where we're going to change the number, right? So if you are making about $60,000, the average person, right? This is where we're going to stick in that 625, right? That's 15% of 50,000. And before we click calculate, we hope that you guys are following along as well. And you guys can increase that depending on your income or decrease that depending on your degree, right? So let's take a look. What we find is that you guys have about $3 million put towards retirement, right? And some of you guys are like, holy smokes, that is way too much money. That's way more than I would need, right? And I know that some people are also thinking, whoa, like that's not enough, like for the lifestyle that I want, right? And so the key point is to understand that, this is too much for some people. Yes. This is too little for some people. Yes. But for most people, this is a reasonably comfortable amount for retirement, even after inflation, fees, and taxes. So hopefully that gives you guys a really clear idea of what it's like to be in real life to calculate those numbers. Yes, Alyssa, we're going to tackle that question in the next presentation. Yeah, there's a separate section all about investing because it is a little bit, I guess, complex. And also, if there's a mod who, it's tough for me to watch the question. So if any mod wants to jump in and just interrupt me with any questions that I can't see the chat, just definitely let me know. So the next part, right? So we finished at 5, 20% of your paycheck goes into investments. Let's talk about buying a house, right? So before we talk about that, let's talk about dream homes for a second. So here's 4 options. We'll bring up the poll now if it's possible. And so what we're going to do is, top right here, we've got like a nice rooftop with a pool, right? The bottom right, we've got this is a house in Vancouver by Metrotown. It's about a $900,000 2-bedroom with a really nice view of the mountains, right? Bottom left here, we've got a family home. Maybe like you guys like to host parties or you guys want like multiple cars, raise a family. And the last one here is D. If you don't like people, then you can join G. This is actually G's house. You can join him on his private island. So let's bring up that poll and you can see which oh, perfect. Thanks so much. Which home is the most popular?
Jacob, who do you think is going to have the lead?
I don't know. I feel like C. I feel like C is the place that, most people are like, man, like if I could live in Vancouver with this house, it also probably is the most expensive one. So like, that's nice. What do you think, man?
Because people want to visit me.
True.
Everyone vote A now, please. Otherwise I look like a fool, but it looks like C is leading. C with 45% of people are leading. There's a small handful with D. You guys hate people too. I love it. And then E is the second most popular. Cool. We'll give it 30 more seconds and then we'll close this down. And I love reading the chat here. It's really distracting, but it's hilarious.
I know, man. I want to read it too, but I can't read and present at the same time. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's close this out and we can go into the next slide.
Perfect. Yeah. Someone just saw really quickly. Someone said like that C is going to be like 3 million or something, 5 million. It really depends where you buy. But yeah, in some parts of Vancouver, definitely it can get that steep. So step 6, okay, what we want to do is we want to bring up that illustration because, there's some awesome homes out there, right? And it's really exciting, but we want to make sure that your home is a blessing, not a curse. Maybe you want to write that down. We want to make sure that your home is a blessing, not a curse. So step 6, right, to keep your home a blessing and not a curse, we want to keep your home expenses under 25% of your household income, right? For those of you who follow Dave Ramsey, you might realize that this is his 25% rule, right? But the thing about Dave Ramsey is that it's a catch-all for Americans, right? G and I, we were talking with our mentors. And so for someone who's single and right out of university, it's very difficult for somebody to have a home and allocate less than 25% of their expenses of their income towards their home. And so we have this 40% in brackets because it's stretching it if you want to go up to 40%, but absolutely higher than 40%, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble, right? So we want to keep your home expenses less than 25% with 40% as an absolute cap, right? Now, home expenses includes either your rent or your mortgage plus your property tax plus your home insurance, okay? And the important part here to understand is it does not include utilities, okay? Does not include utilities, right? Another tip about this is that, the 25% rule is a lot easier if you have a roommate or a spouse, because now your household income has increased, right? And so that 25% rule is a lot easier, right? Now, why are we trying to keep this household income under 25%? Right? On the next slide, we'll talk about this. But basically what happens is when you spend more than 25% of your income on your, if you allocate more than 25% of your income towards your home, what happens is you start to strain your budget, okay? G and I, we have seen so many people, especially in Vancouver and Toronto, who have been totally crushed by their house, totally crushed by their mortgage. Like this image on the left side, that's a pretty accurate image of every time I see somebody with a massive mortgage, right? And so what happens is that this really affects somebody's quality of life, right? So imagine that you guys are going to a restaurant, right, with some friends. And every time you go to a restaurant with your friends, right, you start thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can afford this, right? And then maybe this has happened to you already, but you start hunting for the cheapest item on the menu, right? And then after that, you're like, oh, okay, I gotta find the cheapest item. Like, oh, okay, $9.99 for that water. I'm gonna get that, right? And so you think, oh shoot, $9.99, but plus tip. Now it's even more, right? So you start stressing out a lot. So this is something we see all the time, right? And so we don't want you guys to spend the next 20 years of your life thinking about the affordability of a menu, right? I know someone just said student problems, but man, this is something we see even people in their 20s and 30s. Like this is actually very relevant. I'll show you some statistics in a second. But basically that's a huge part of your quality of life, right? Another thing is that we had a friend who was visiting from out of town, and he comes to Vancouver, and Vancouver is really well known for like Grouse Mountain and Whistler and these awesome ski resorts. So he goes to the top of the mountain and he just looks at the mountains and he just thinks, wow, this is an amazing view. And the second thing he thinks is like, this was so expensive, right? And so what he does is he's like, man, I gotta like stay at the top of this mountain for as long as possible to make the most out of my money. Like he like goes up at like 9 a.m. so that he can go down at 9 p.m. right? And I totally relate. Like that totally makes a lot of sense because we want to get that money's worth, right? So that really detracts from the point of these two things. So the point of going to a restaurant, right, is that you can spend time with people who are important to you, so that you can enjoy the food, right? That's the point of going to a restaurant. But if you're always thinking about the cost of things, it's very hard to do that, right? Same thing with when you're going skiing. If you guys are always thinking about the cost, right, it's very hard to live in the present, to enjoy the actual gift that you've been given, right? So I won't talk about major purchases too much, but basically you can't afford them. And the last thing we'll talk about is giving, right? So if someone is strained by their budget, can that person be outrageously generous, right? Probably not, right? And so write this down. This is a really important thing. We want you guys to own your house. We do not want you guys, we want you guys to own your house. We don't want your house to own you, okay? We want you to own your house. We don't want your house to own you. And unfortunately, this is the case for very, very many people, right? I don't know if you guys know this, but 53% of Canadians right now are living paycheck to paycheck, okay? 53% are living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, in America, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
Sorry, we have a question.
Sure.
Was keeping the home expenses under 25% before or after taxes?
After tax, good question.
After tax? Okay, perfect.
Yes, after tax. Yeah, so basically, like just to reiterate what I just said, so 53% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, right? If you guys want to see modern day slaves, look outside your window. That is exactly what is happening, right? And that's normal, right? We don't want that to be you guys, right? Your quality of life is really, really important. So let's go to the next slide. And yeah, I think someone just said crazy high percentages. Look at these percentages, okay? So in January 2020, Vancouver was ranked as the second least affordable housing market in the world, okay? So it's not that surprising for you guys. You're like, oh, you know what? That's ridiculous, but we're used to it, right? What's easy to forget though, is that living in Vancouver is the equivalent of owning like the Rolls Royce of the world, owning the Lamborghini of the world. It's literally like everyone is trying to get to Vancouver because living here is so nice, right? So if you guys are upset or like angry. I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh my goodness, like it's so ridiculous. Like it's because it is the Rolls Royce of the world, but a lot of us have grown up here. And so we think that it's pretty normal, right? Here's another statistic. In July 2018, okay, I'm gonna read this slowly. Household income required to cover home-related expenses or payments was 87.8%. Okay, 87.8%. That's normal in Vancouver, right? If you can imagine that, you can just imagine in your mind, like what it must be like to be that person. Like think of their quality of life. How often that they get to go out to restaurants, how often that they get to give and be outrageously generous. Very, very few times, right? So we want to ensure that your guys' home is a blessing, not a curse. Keep your housing payments less than 25% of your household income, right? So a question we get very often is, should I rent or should I buy? And we won't spend too much time on this. And the reason is because it is 100% dependent on someone's personal situation. So a lot of you guys in the future will be like, this is important, but what do I do here? It's a really tough one to answer without getting to know someone's personal situation. So we've given two resources here. One is Dave Ramsey and one is Ben Felix, and they both discuss this pros and cons quite in depth on YouTube and on Google. So you guys can look that up as a supplemental resource. Yeah. So now that we finished step 6, we're going to talk about step 7. And once again, we won't spend too much time on this because you guys probably don't have any kids just yet. So down the road, it'll be relevant. But basically, there's an account called the RESP, which stands for Registered Education Savings Plan. And what this is that every year, for every $2,500 that you put in, the government contributes $500, right? So basically, they give you free money to encourage kids to encourage people to save for their kids' education, right? And these investments are also allowed to grow tax-free, right? So if you have questions on that, we can definitely address that in the Q&A. It's not super relevant right now, but we'll just leave you guys with that point. And so step 8, right? This is a really important part. Step 8 is to pay off your home, okay? To pay off your home. We want you guys to be a Morgan Freeman, okay? We want you guys to be a Morgan Freeman. Oh, sorry. We want you guys to be a mortgage-free man, okay? We want you guys to be a mortgage-free man or woman, okay? And the reason that this is so important, okay? The reason that we say this is because there was a study that was done, okay? And there was a lot of people who think, you know what, if we pay up our mortgage as slow as possible, we'll take that money and we'll invest it, right? It's the same issue as the student loan thing that I talked about last time, right? And so ultimately, right, Dave Ramsey performed a study on 10,000 millionaires, and his conclusion was to pay off your mortgage first, right? And so this is a controversial topic, once again, just like student loans, with compelling arguments for both sides. And so we're not really sure if there's a right answer to this question. Should I pay off my mortgage as soon as possible, right? What we do know is that if your goal is to become financially independent, right, paying off your mortgage first is a key part of a proven process that has already worked for millions of people. And as I said last time, my mentor always asked me, would you rather be rich or would you rather be right? Would you rather follow a process that has already worked for millions of people, or would you rather deviate a little bit because it makes sense to you? Right? Now that we've finished all that, right, we're going to come to one big conclusion slide, which basically is a summary of everything that we just talked about, right? So this is the $1 million slide. This is our life's work in one slide. So if you guys want to take a picture, that would be probably a good idea. And so I'll quickly just run through it. So step 1 is to get your disability, critical illness, and life insurance in place, right? So that's your firm foundation, right? You got to make sure that that foundation is built on a rock. It's rock solid. It's not on quicksand, right? Step 2 is to get a small emergency fund, right? We're going to keep it small because in step 3, we're going to pay off that debt as soon as possible, right? Eliminate that debt because modern day slaves are not in chains. They are in debt, okay? Step 4 is to create that emergency fund. And this completes the first 4 steps, right? And you guys may notice, okay? You cannot move on to step 2 until you've completed step 1. You cannot move on to step 3 until you've completed step 2, right? This is a leveling up system, right? So steps 1 to 4 are really important because that is what creates the foundation and the base of your financial plan. And without it, a lot of things can go wrong, and an uncontrollable event could totally make your plan irrelevant, okay? What's interesting is that 5, 6, 7, and 8, those are steps that you'll be doing simultaneously, okay? So the first 4 steps, you got to level up one at a time. And then 5, 6, 7, and 8, you'll be doing them all together, okay? Maybe write that down also, okay? And so what we're going to do, I'll quickly go over it again. So step 5 is investing 20% of your after-tax income, right? That's a general rule. So for you guys, probably towards 10 to 15% is okay. Every single paycheck, 10 to 15% going towards your investments, okay? Step 6, keep your home expenses less than 25% of after-tax household income, right? We want you guys to have a great quality of life, right? We don't want you guys to be squeezed and slammed by a mortgage like so many people in Vancouver and Toronto. Okay. Step 7 is to fund your children's education with the RESP, and step 8 is to pay off your mortgage as soon as possible, right? And then step 9 is to be, build wealth and be outrageously generous. So we're gonna pause here for a second just to make sure that you guys have written that down. And then let's make the next slide, G. Good. So this is what it's gonna look like. This is exactly what you guys are gonna do as soon as you graduate, right? So you're gonna get your income, right? And then the first thing you do when you get income is you're gonna pay taxes. So that's gonna be about 15%, right? And then after 15%, right, you're gonna put 20% towards your investments every single paycheck, right? And then you're gonna put about 25%, hopefully less, right, towards your home, okay? And then after that, if you have kids, those kind of things, you're gonna fund that towards living and your children's education and those kind of things, and also paying off your mortgage, right? And then step 10, oh, whoa, what's this? What's this giving that we didn't talk about, right? So you guys may have noticed, like, we didn't talk about giving throughout the 9 steps at all, right? But what G and I feel is that, giving is actually, is absolutely something that you need to prioritize inside of your financial plan, right? And especially throughout the 9 steps. And so with this process, each of you guys are going to be experts at building wealth. And so our biggest concern is that by the time you reach step 9, you guys will be so focused on storing up things for yourself that you will forget the entire reason why we were building wealth in the first place, right? So that is why we want you guys to give throughout the 9 steps. And so if you guys can't be generous now, how can you be generous later? If you can't be generous now, how can you be generous later? In other words, if you can't give $5 now, how can you give $5,000 later? Right? Maybe write that down. If you can't give $5 now, how can you give $5,000 later? So the thing is, traditional wealth management, the way that you guys learn in the books, the way that society teaches, is that traditional wealth management is focused on solely building wealth. But we are more concerned about the type of person that you become, right? So money is just a tool. It will make you more of what you are. Actually, you should probably write that down. Money is just a tool. It will make you more of what you are. So money will make selfish people even more selfish, and money will make generous people even more generous, right? We've seen this in our own practice, but like we've seen this with our mentors. It's also in the Bible that we see. So we just want to let you guys know that money is just a tool. It just makes you more of what you are. So G's going to close here with a story about giving, and I'll leave it to you, man.
Absolutely. And so I have a quick story that I'd like to share with you guys. This was a few years ago when I was really practicing a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I was getting ready for a tournament. I was practicing a lot and I ended up blowing up my back. So I went to the doctor and they weren't sure exactly what was wrong with it. So they said, go check out chiro, physio, and massage, right? And so nothing seemed to work, but I finally decided to give the massage therapy a try. So I looked up the closest RMT, registered massage therapy place near my place, and I went. And when I went to this guy's office, it was really interesting because I noticed a lot of backpacks and necklaces just draped all around the office. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. But I didn't make any comments of it. But a really nice man named Chris greeted me at the door. And yeah, he just said, oh, are you Jonathan? You must be here for the massage. And so I said, yep, that's me. So I signed up for a 30-minute massage just because, broke college kid. But Chris actually started asking me questions about myself. And I thought, oh, that's kind of weird, but seems like a nice guy. Yeah, I'll tell him about myself. And so he's telling me, what do you do? And I told him, oh, I go to school, I volunteer, I work a little bit. And he said, wow, that's so amazing that you do all these things. And he just made me feel really good about myself, right? And so I thought, oh, I kind of like this guy, right? I'll answer his questions all day. And after a few minutes of just talking, I decided, it's probably a good idea for me to reciprocate. So I'll ask about him. And I thought the great thing that I should probably ask about is just the different backpacks all around his shop, right? So I asked about the backpacks. What's going on with all these backpacks and the necklaces? And what he told me was he actually goes to Southeast Asia multiple times throughout the year. And what he does is he buys these handmade backpacks and necklaces from the locals, from the impoverished families. He brings them back here to Canada and he actually sells them to fundraise. And then he'll just give that money straight back to them. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I've heard a lot of stories about people giving to charity because they're passionate about a number of causes and so on. And it's really interesting because there's a large disconnect from us in Canada all the way over to Southeast Asia. So that's really interesting. Please tell me more. And this conversation ended up being 2 hours. And so we finished our massage and it ended up being a 2 hour massage. And I thought, oh man, I have to pay for a 2 hour massage. I signed up for 30 minutes. Can't pay for this, but I guess I'll have to. But what he told me was, you know what? Don't worry about the massage. Don't worry about paying for it. What I want to challenge you is actually instead to just pass the kindness on forward. And I thought, that's amazing. I got a free massage. Look at that. Look at that. So that's perfect. So I ran with it. I didn't really think much about the passing the kindness on forwards or whatever. It was in the back of my head though. I didn't really do anything, to be honest though. But my back still wasn't better. So a few days later, I went back to Chris. I went back. He friendly man greeted me at the front of the shop, and I saw the necklaces and the backpacks again. I thought, oh, I'm back here. I'm back here. I love this place actually. So laid down. He was giving me a massage. I signed up again for a 30-minute massage. The same thing happened where he's just asking me, how's your week? What have you been doing? And I tell him a little bit about me, and he goes, wow, that's amazing that you're doing all these things. And again, it made me feel really good. So I just wanted to reciprocate and ask more about, tell me more about these necklaces. You know, you told me a little bit about them last time, but just tell me more about it. And then again, he would just tell me about how important it was for him to be giving and how much meaning it gave him as an individual who was able to find so much meaning in charity rather than just doing things for himself. He could have easily just taken all this money and that time and effort to just do things that he wanted to do with it. But the thing he wanted to do with it was actually give back. And he just loved to see the impact it had to these different people in that country. And the interesting thing was this as well. He told me that a little bit of money here goes such a long way there. And I thought, wow, I learned another little something new today, right? So every time I had a chance to speak with this guy, I just kept learning about the importance of giving to him. And it just resonated with me every single time. And so we finished the massage, and again, it turned into a 2 hour massage. And I just told him, oh man, looks like I'll have to pay for it this time. There's no way, right? This time I'll definitely pay for it. And he tells me, you know what? Again, don't worry about the massage, but I want you to pass the kindness on forward. And then he told me this, your back is pretty messed up. I don't know what you've been doing, but it looks like you're actually going to have to come into the shop every single day for the next week and a half or 2 weeks. But I'm too busy. I have too many clients. So I can't fit you into my normal schedule. Can you come in 2 hours before I open up just so I can treat you? And I thought, what? What is this guy doing, right? Why would he do that such thing for me? But really, to me, there was no explanation other than this was honestly, to me, it felt like it was God's work, and Chris was almost like an angel to me, right? Because over the next 2 weeks, what happened was Chris, I had a chance to speak with him and hear about his passion and his perspective on money. And he was able to change my heart and my entire perspective of what it meant to accumulate wealth and to actually give it away instead. Because up to this point, all I had been doing was working incredibly hard just so that I could get to a place where I could retire early. That was what my goal was. And so I was very tight with my money. You could almost imagine it as if I had very tightly closed hands with it and had a hard time spending on myself, spending on my family, or spending on really anything that was important for me. All because I wanted to get to a place where I could just fund myself sufficiently. And so I realized, wow, these things are actually very important to me. The things that he's saying make complete sense. I can't believe this was the perspective I had this entire time, right? And so by the end of those 2 weeks, I told Chris, I'm going to make you a promise, and you don't need to accept it. This is just a promise that I'm making to myself and to you. First of all, you've taught me so many things, right? With every paycheck that comes in my way in the future, with whatever I decide to become, a little bit of that is going to go to your charity, and a little bit of it is also going to go to other charities of my choice. But you taught me to give. The other promise was, if I decide to go into this finance route, which I was contemplating at the time, if I decide to do this, I'm going to base my practice or create my design, my business design in such a way where I want to share this story with other people and not just tell them about how to grow their wealth, but also how to give it properly, the same way you changed my heart. And so really that was my promise to myself and to Chris of how I was going to pay the kindness on forwards. And so I want you guys to take away two things from this story. Number one, giving breaks the power that money has on us. Giving breaks the power that money has on us, right? So I would really invite you guys to just sit down and think about these two things. And number two, I love this analogy, the giving muscle. And so Jacob referred to this earlier, where he said, if you can't give $5,000 today, how can you promise yourself that you can give $5,000 when you're a millionaire, right? When you have tons to give at that point. And so you guys can think of giving as if it's a muscle. So when you start out working out, you're not very strong, you get tired easily, you're not good at it, maybe it's not even fun. But once you get into a rhythm of things, and the more you work out, the stronger you get, and the more fun it gets. It's the same thing with giving, right? So this is why we actually encourage, even if it's a small amount today, I'm in no position to tell you exactly how much to give. It's just a matter of you to determine for yourself, how much do you want to give? And really just pick the charities of your own choice. If you have no idea where to give to, then I can easily tell you about the places that I'm passionate about and explain to you why I feel called to these. One of them being Chris's, obviously, right? But these are the two main takeaways that I would love for you guys to just think about. And it's not common that in the financial industry, people talk about giving. But to Jacob and I, this is something that is just so important to us. And we're very appreciative that you guys are sitting through this and listening to our story here today. Jacob, did you have any other final comments with giving? If not, that's really all we have for you guys prepared. We are going to end it a little bit earlier. Today, we wanted this to be a really concisely packed, high value presentation, just going over the steps of the wealth accumulation process. And then what we want to do is with regards to things like budgeting, with regards to credit scores and credit reports, we want to leave that for the fourth presentation. And of course, investing will be next week.
Great. So maybe we'll just open it up to questions now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like so much to share this. I love how you teach both the importance of making money / becoming financially successful, but also the importance of giving. Let me tell you why this is so important to us. Okay. So my mentors manage high net worth. So my Uncle Sonny, his average client has a net worth between 20 and 50 million. Okay. My mentor Lee, he manages $6 billion. What we found is that, in Vancouver, like there's a lot of very wealthy people, but there's some of the most stressed and depressed people that you guys will ever meet. It's actually really sad. And so it's kind of funny too, but it is sad, and so there's so much going on there. And, Uncle Sonny just tells me this all the time, and Bao also, he says, our goal is not to make the most amount of money. Our goal is to make the most amount of money with the least amount of stress, right? There's parts of financial management that are so important, right? But there's things that like people are so focused on the dollar amount, they don't realize how intertwined money is with people's lives. And so that's why we focus on this so much, because this is something that you can't learn in a textbook. You have to go through it in real life. And that's why it's something so personal for us. So I'm glad you guys noticed that.
Yeah, we'll open up the floor really to questions here. I'll close the presentation so simply we can have it more of a interactive.
Yeah, there's a question here asking why was the return rate at 9% when we were doing the calculator thing, the exercise?
Great question. I feel like that's going to be a longer discussion for, and when we do, we'll explain it in the next session. But I'll just let you know that 9% is, I'm going to look up here, sorry. That 9% is a very realistic number. Yeah, it's, we'll talk about it more next time, but otherwise it'll just be too much, I think, content for just one Q&A. That's a great question, really good question, very important.
And then the next question is, what is the debt snowball?
Yeah, do you tackle this one, G, or do you want me to jump in?
Sure. There's two main ways of tackling debt. Number one, you can tackle it by the highest interest rate first, right? So let's say you have a car loan at 5%, student loan at 4%, and credit card at 20%. Then you would tackle the credit card first because this is called the debt avalanche, by the way. So that debt avalanche is the highest interest rate. So credit card first, simply because it's accumulating most interest. And then you would go into the car loan at 5%, and then the student loan at 4%. The debt snowball, on the other hand, this is the one we typically recommend, but everyone's situation is unique and every individual is unique. So please consult us before making a decision. Debt snowball is looking at the one with the smallest dollar value that you owe, right? So let's say you have a student loan of $1,000. Actually, that wouldn't make sense. Let's say a credit card of $1,000, a student loan of $10,000, and car loan of $20,000, something like that. Then you would go ahead and do the smallest amount first, and then the next biggest one, the next biggest one. The reason we encourage this is because you get small wins along the way. And this just motivates you to continue to chop off the different types of debt that you have. And it's just an encouraging way to go ahead and tackle on your debt.
Yeah, I also mentioned this. Gracie, is a great question, and we addressed this in the first series. And so if you haven't watched that video, watch that one first. And then it's important to notice that, so we talked about debt snowball and debt avalanche. And the reason we didn't talk about it in depth is because there's tons of YouTube videos on it. And Google has talked about this a lot also. So I'm gonna post a video in the chat right now. So hopefully you can see that, Gracie. But that'll explain debt snowball and debt avalanche really clearly, really succinctly. And you'll get it right away, I guarantee you. Yeah, so thanks for explaining that, John. But yeah, this will be like a really, it'll just save you a lot of time. Yeah.
All right. Are you guys ready for the next question?
Yes, that's good.
Do you have any recommendations for people who don't have steady incomes and instead have their income fluctuate working freelance?
Great question. Great question. Do you want to tackle this one, G? Or do you want to jump
Can
in?
relate. I mean, that's Jacob and I right there for you as well. We're both self-employed, and yeah, we don't have steady incomes at all. But the process remains the same, right? When it comes to budgeting, we can give you a few additional tips, but the process itself remains the same.
The biggest one is you need a bigger emergency fund because your income is more variable. So there's two situations where we'll recommend a larger emergency fund. So usually we say 3 to 6 months. Joseph, I'm not sure if you saw the first series, first video in the series that we did, but our guideline is always 3 to 6 months. But if you have a specialized job, okay, or if you have freelance work, right, variable income, then we actually recommend 6 to 12 months usually, right? And so hopefully that makes sense. It's because we have variable income, but we also want to make sure that you are balancing efficiency with your investments with that safety. Yeah, so that's the biggest difference. But once again, it always comes down to someone's personal situation. But that the biggest change is just your emergency fund is just a little bit bigger. Great question.
All right. Next question is, can international students invest in Canada?
Nice. Mia, where are you from?
Feel free to just write it in the chat if you're shy.
Yeah. Hong Kong. Nice. Let me think about this for a second. I also want to jump in first, G. I have an answer, but
Yeah,
that's
let
better.
me find the question again.
Yeah, can international students invest in, what's it?
Oh, in Canada.
In Canada. So the long short answer is yes, right? The only concern I have is that the long short answer is yes, but we're not allowed to talk about it because our license prevents us, especially since you're international, and that's beyond our way beyond our license. But the long short answer is yes. You just have to ask somebody who is in Hong Kong who can walk you through those steps.
Okay, for next question is, for step number 5, which investment accounts do we put 20% of our money after taxes in? TFSA or RSP, etc.?
Good question. We'll tackle that next time. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. We're going to be talking about setting up different buckets, right? Utilizing TFSAs versus RSPs. When it comes to our presentations in general, by the way, we don't want to give you guys presentations on things that you can Google, but rather we wanted to give it like a little bit past just the very basics. If you guys had specific questions about things like the TFSA, how it works, you can either just reach out to us and we can give you an assessment on your own personal situation based off the many factors of your unique situation. Should you be using a TFSA or RSP? Or you can just either YouTube different videos or feel free to shameless plug, follow me on my finance Instagram page at jhafinance. That's always a great option. Yeah, that's my answer for you.
All right, next question is, are you going to talk more about owning property later while minimizing the years you'll be paying off the mortgage? So a 30-year mortgage doesn't seem attractive to me, but it seems so impossible in GTA and GVA, even if you're saving a lot.
Jacob, did you want to answer this or would you like me to?
Jump in first. I'm to process it quick.
Sure. I think this is a great question that we'd want to address in the 4th workshop personally. Especially when we're considering a question this specific, we really do need to look at specific situations as well, right? Especially, yeah, when we're looking at amortization rates and the type of mortgage you want to qualify for, we need to consider a lot of different things that you're planning to have in the future. So it's hard to answer this just as a one-size-fits-all sort of answer. Jacob, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So to answer the question directly, No, we will not be talking about this more, how to afford more owning property. This is a really client-specific situation, and that's why. So like, for example, if you have a spouse or if you have a girlfriend that you want to buy a property with, that'll change this completely. If you have a variable income, that'll change this completely. If you have, yeah, there's just so many things that will just totally change the situation, the reliability of your income. So yeah, we won't be talking about it a bunch more, but if you want to talk to us directly, Wing, you can definitely, Wing. If you want to just DM us directly, we can talk about this a little bit more, and yeah, it'll be more tailored to your situation.
Okay, the next question is, should our emergency fund include only our living expenses for half of the rent/mortgage, or should it account for our roommate or spouse? Or should it account for if our roommate or spouse leaves?
This is a good question. Hopefully your spouse doesn't leave you, okay? And also hopefully your roommate doesn't leave you either. But man, if your spouse leaves you, you've got bigger problems, okay? Money can solve problems, but not all of them. This is a serious problem, okay? But to answer that question a little more directly, usually, okay, if you're getting to the point where there's some stress between you and your roommates or you and your spouse, and you feel like maybe you have to cover this mortgage soon, then absolutely extend that emergency fund. But under normal situations, probably not. You don't need to extend that emergency fund. But I do want to say this. G mentioned this last time about the magic number for your emergency fund. The emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of expenses, but it's most important that it's a number that helps you sleep at night. So just so you guys know, my family has a 24-month emergency fund. Just so you guys know, right? My mom is not a huge numbers person. Like, money really stresses her out. So 24 months emergency fund, she sleeps like a rock, right? That's just the way that our family does it. So
I'll throw in something as well.
Yeah, man, please.
Identifying your emergency fund number as well. Maybe you're confused to, should it be closer to 3 months or closer to 6 months? This might help. So if you look at the amount of things that are dependent on you, or the amount of responsibilities that you have that are tied financially, this can help. So let's say you are a student who's living with your parents and you don't have to pay any bills. Then you can be closer to the 3 month mark, because even if you lose your small amount of income on your part-time job, it's not the end of the world. You'll still have a place to live. You'll still be able to eat food and all these sort of things. Versus, let's say you're the head of the family and you're the breadwinner, right? Your kids rely on your income, your spouse relies on your income, and you're paying rent and everything. If you lose your income because you lost your job and you can't find one in the next 6 months, your family's screwed. So you want to be closer to the 6 month mark. And hopefully that helps answer this question a little bit.
Great. Last thing I'll talk about here is maybe this high divorce rate comment. It's not a question, but if you want a guaranteed way to, not guaranteed way, but a very high percentage probability of having your net worth, like that's true. Like, there's like a 50% divorce rate in Canada or in the world. I forget, I have to double check that, but it's very, very high. And so what we want to do is make sure that when we have someone who has a spouse or a committed relationship, managing finance is very different. There's a process for that too. There's a process for everything. You guys might realize. There's no accident that people are building wealth so well, right? There's no accident that high net worth people become high net worth people. There's no accident that people who get married and can manage their finances correctly are doing it accidentally, right? There's a process for that too, right? We won't talk about that too much, but all you guys need to know is that there's some key things when you guys have a spouse or get married eventually. Some steps and some tips that you guys need to follow to make sure that money doesn't become the thing that separates you guys, right? Because it actually is a very high stress topic. Mm-hmm. Cool. So we're going over time here. I just want to make sure that that's everything. But
yeah, so if you guys need to head out, then please feel free to. I think Jacob and I will stay on for the next maybe 5-10 minutes. If anybody did have any questions or wanted to chat more privately, we're happy to chat.
Mm-hmm. I will say this.
Great advice and workshops too. You know what's funny? One of my mentors actually said, when someone comes up to him, let's just say at a party, and asks, "What do you do?" He says, "I prevent divorces." He says, "What do you mean?" Well, the follow-up question is, what do you think's the number one cause of divorce? And either they say finances or something, and then finances is usually top 3, right? So we'll help you with that aspect of your marriages. Appreciate you photo shoot pics sprinkled throughout the slideshow. Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, we'll say one last thing here too is that the last Q&A, you guys are really lucky. So our mentor is actually coming in for the last Q&A. Our mentor Ivan. So he's a guy who's managed high net worth and middle of the road. He's got 8 designations, probably more than anyone you guys will ever meet. So he's going to come in for the Q&A. So come grill us with your toughest questions. If we can't answer it, Ivan will. So yeah, I just want to guys let you know the Q&A in the 4th session is going to be pretty awesome.
How did we meet our mentors? You know what? It depends which mentors you're talking about as well. Personally, I've had a homicide detective as a mentor and a lawyer as a mentor, and then I have my finance mentors as well. So it really does depend which ones. If you wanted tips on finding a mentor, then more than happy to talk to you guys about that as well. Yeah. Jacob has some crazy stories about how he's met his mentors as well.
Yeah, maybe if that's the last question, I'll answer it, but we got to start the recording for if I answer this question.
All right, so before you answer that question, I'm going to quickly end the workshop. So thank you, Jacob and Jonathan, for the informative workshop today. And thanks everyone for coming out and joining us today. Just a quick reminder to join our Discord server if you haven't already. The link can be found here in the chat. So, and be sure to follow us on our social media at Emerge SFU, and feel free to tag us on your Instagram stories. And we love seeing you guys engage with us. So yeah, please do tag us, and we'll see y'all next week. And for those who want to leave, you can hop out. If not, you can stay for Jacob's story, and I'll pause the recording.